You've probably wondered, why can't the afternoons be like the mornings, where you're deep in flow, you're finishing all this work and you feel fucking unstoppable? But they can. And what it comes down to is fixing a couple of things you're doing outside of the afternoon that is hurting your performance. So I want to show you what's going wrong, how to fix it so you can start crushing your afternoons. So what really goes wrong in the afternoon? The first thing that probably comes to mind is that damn brain fog. Every time you eat, even if it's healthy, 30 minutes later, you get brain fog and start feeling sluggish. So when you're on those first couple of calls or trying to finish up those ad scripts, it feels like your brain won't work. When the prospect has an objection, you give an okay answer. Or when you're trying to rework the ad scripts, you half-ass it because you can't think straight. And then you lose the sale or the ads flop, all because of that damn brain fog. The second issue is probably your inconsistent energy. And yes, we do have a natural dip in our energy in the afternoons, but it shouldn't be for the entire time. And what typically happens is you get these waves of energy where one moment you're focused and banging out work, then 15 minutes later, you're practically a zombie. So instead of focusing on what you actually need to get done, when a client messages you or a VA has a question, you respond. And it's because you have no energy to focus on the real work, so you decide to do the easy work. And once you come back to the real work, you have to remember what you're doing, get focused again, and you end up wasting a lot of time. So what happens is you get way less work done compared to your morning sessions. The last problem that comes to mind is probably how irritable you are. Problems just seem to piss you off way more in the afternoon compared to the morning. So you end up taking that energy into your afternoon. When you're recording content, you sound less friendly. When you're working on that client project and your brain is complete mush, you slam your laptop and say, fuck it, I'll do it later. And what often happens is you stay angry for the rest of the day. So you don't enjoy your time off, or you even hurt the people you love most. And you might be thinking, a lot of these issues are just how the afternoons go. Everyone preaches you should do deep work in the morning because you're most fresh, and that's when you have fewer distractions. And my argument to that is, why do some people crush the evenings? Yes, there are fewer distractions, but their energy should be shot. It's the end of the day. So if that's the case, why can't the afternoons be just as productive as the mornings and the evenings? And yes, there are more distractions, but you should have energy, be able to think clearly, and be in a good mood. And it turns out a lot of these afternoon issues aren't because of the afternoon itself. They're because of what you're doing outside of the afternoon. For example, the brain fog you get after eating is probably because your gut is a mess. That is why even when you eat healthy, you still get brain fog. And this is even more likely if you have other digestive issues like abdominal pain or bloating. And if your gut isn't working right, the food you consume is going to inflame your guts. And that inflammation is also going to inflame your brain, aka brain fog. And this is because of a special connection between the brain and the gut, where if something is wrong in the gut, it affects the brain. And this confused me for a long time. For lunch, I often just had chicken and rice. And it seemed like no matter how healthy I ate, I always got brain fog. Well, it turns out I had a gut issue where most of what I was eating was making that issue even worse. And that's exactly why no matter what I ate, I always got brain fog. Then there's the issue of inconsistent energy. And this is likely because your metabolism is broken. The job of the metabolism is to turn food into energy. And when your metabolism isn't working properly, instead of food giving you consistent energy, you get these bursts of energy. And you feel this most in the hours after eating. That is why one moment it feels like you're getting into a flow, and the next your energy completely disappears. And this is also another reason why you get brain fog after eating. When your metabolism is broken, your blood sugar levels are going to be unstable. So after you eat, your blood sugar levels are going to crash hard. So you might be saying, I'll fast for the afternoon just like I do in the morning. But a lot of the time, the fasting you do in the morning is another reason you feel dead in the afternoon. And when you fast for 4, 5, or even 6 hours straight, and you also don't get good sleep or don't manage stress well, all you're doing is putting more stress on your body. And when you fast, you're telling your body you have no food. So your body's like, oh shit, Let's use some of our resources we have to give ourselves energy and focus to go out and find some food. And in the short term, this is great. You can leverage the stress response to get high quality work done. But by the afternoon, you've depleted the resources that keep you focused and energized. And this is why you feel so dead. It's also probably why you crave sugary and salty foods. The stress response depletes you of those nutrients, and now your body is looking to refuel them. And I used to fast for 4 hours every morning, and I'd crush my mornings. But one thing I always noticed was around that 2 to 3 hour mark, my energy would change. I'd feel a bit jittery or even anxious, like that feeling you get when you have too much caffeine. And it's because my body had been running on the stress response for too long. So when I finally had breakfast and was no longer running on the stress response, I crashed hard and my work output went into the gutter. And then there's the way you work. 8 hours straight in the same room, no sunlight, you eat at your desk, and the only breaks you get are when you use the restroom. Of course, you're gonna feel like shit in the afternoon. You don't prioritize recovery. On top of that, your weekends are watching Netflix, ordering Uber Eats 3 times a day, and going out drinking with your friends. The only real recovery you're getting is your sleep. That is why on the days you sleep 5 hours, you can only survive the morning. You don't have enough fuel to get you through the afternoon. And being under-recovered and stressed out is a great recipe for being irritable. That is why I always used to be such a bitch to people in the afternoons. And I remember when I was sending looms to my app development clients, I'd always have this irritated tone in my voice. And one time, a client even asked me if everything was okay. And that is when I started to realize that this moodiness was becoming a problem. And this also happened with my family, where if they interrupted me while I was doing work in the afternoon, I'd treat it like they came into my office, picked up my computer, and smashed it on the ground, even though most of the time they were just asking a simple question. And let's not forget all that caffeine you had in the morning. Now that it's finally wearing off and everything else is hitting you at once, you're in for a miserable afternoon. But there is a way to change that. Instead of sacrificing the afternoon for the morning, we can crush both the morning and the afternoon. The first step is to fix your broken metabolism. This is directly going to target the energy crashes you get in the hours after eating. Instead of the burst of energy you usually get in the afternoon, you're going to get more consistent energy when you fix your metabolism. And the first practice you really want to implement here is zone 2 cardio. What zone 2 cardio does is it improves the health of your mitochondria, basically the structure that converts food into energy. And what zone 2 cardio is an exercise intensity. That's it. So if you have this little graph here, you have different intensities of exercise. Something like walking would probably be zone 1. And how you can tell what zone or intensity of cardio you are in is by seeing how you speak. If you can hold a normal conversation like this and talk like I am, you're probably in zone 1 cardio. Now, what zone 2 cardio would look like is that you can still hold a conversation, but you're going to be breathing more. So it might look something like this. Hey, how's your day going? I'm doing pretty good. And you're just like breathing in between words, but you can still speak and it's still, fairly comfortable to speak. Now, where it starts to get in the higher zones, like zone 3, zone 4, and zone 5, is where you're gasping for air and you cannot hold a conversation, then you're probably in a high zone. So now, the zone that we want to obviously stay in is zone 2. So an easy way to tell what zone you're in while you're exercising is just to see how well you can speak. Another easy way, and a simpler way, is just to use a wearable tracker, something like a Whoop, an Apple Watch. It usually tells you what zone you're in when you're exercising. And if it doesn't, you can calculate what zone you're in with your heart rate. But the whole point of zone 2 cardio is we want to keep this zone 2 duration throughout the entire workout. And because of this, you can do whatever exercise you want. Swimming, biking, running, incline walking, because all that matters here is you're holding the zone 2 intensity for the entire workout. And we want to be in this zone because that is where you get these mitochondrial benefits. That is where you upgrade the system that gives our body energy so you can get consistent energy after eating. And what I'd recommend you do for workouts is 60-minute workouts. And the reason I recommend 60-minute workouts is because studies have shown that that is the minimum threshold you need to meet in order to get these energy benefits, in order to upgrade your mitochondria. And you want to do this for at least 3 times a week because that is the frequency you want to hit to get these mitochondrial benefits. And you might be saying, Trevor, this is a lot of time. And I don't expect you to hit this right away. You should work your way up in the duration of the workouts and the frequency. But the beauty of zone 2 cardio is that it's easy enough where you can do other things while you're doing it, especially if you're doing incline walking on a treadmill, or maybe you're doing a stationary bike. What I often do is I'm on a stationary bike, I'm outside at my gym, and I'll be on my phone. I'll be responding to work messages, or I'll be listening to a podcast, learning about health, taking notes, or I might be calling my family. So it makes it super versatile, and the 60 minutes is really not 60 minutes to burn to exercise. It's 60 minutes where you can do whatever the fuck you want because it's so easy to do. And the second practice here we want to focus on is blood sugar regulation. And this is really one of the root causes of a broken metabolism. And a lot of these other practices actually help with your blood sugar regulation. And so there's quite a few practices you can implement to make sure your blood sugar is working properly. Firstly, we have your meals here. And what you want to do with your meals is make sure that you're eating carbs with other macronutrients. So things like protein, fats, fiber. All of these are going to slow how fast these carbs enter your bloodstream and give you less of a blood sugar spike. So instead of just eating a bowl of rice or an apple, you should eat a bowl of rice with some chicken and avocado. That way your blood sugar is not going to spike as high. And what you also want to avoid doing is only eating carbs, only eating naked carbs, like just eating an apple randomly throughout the day. That's just gonna spike your blood sugar levels. You ideally wanna eat it with other macronutrients. Now, if you're eating carbs before the gym and you're gonna work out, then that's a different story. But if you're just eating a cookie randomly, that's not going to help with your blood sugar regulation. Now, the second thing we can do here is exercise after meals. This is also going to blunt that blood sugar spike and help regulate our blood sugar. So this could be to walk for 15 minutes after you eat lunch, or you can do 10 bodyweight squats. And both of these are going to blunt that blood sugar spike you normally get after eating. What you can also do is eat whole foods. And the reason for this is because a lot of processed foods strip out the fiber and they also add sugar, hidden sugars to your food. And both of those are going to make your blood sugar spike further. But what whole foods do is they have less sugar and they also have fiber, which again slows how fast the carbohydrates enter your bloodstream, so you get less of a blood sugar spike. Another thing you can do is eat of consistent 2 to 3 meals a day. If you're somebody who snacks a lot, what you're doing with this is you are consistently keeping your blood sugar levels elevated. And over time, this is going to make your body insulin resistant, which just fucks with your blood sugar regulation, not to get too deep into the weeds. So what you want to do is eat 2 to 3 meals a day. And of course, you can still snack, but if you're somebody who's snacking like throughout the day, 8 times a day, whatever it may be, again, you're going to keep your blood sugar levels elevated, and that is no bueno. What you can also do is eat in an 8 to 12 hour window. And this is going to help with your insulin sensitivity, which basically helps with your blood sugar regulation. So if you eat breakfast at 7 a.m., you should have dinner by 7 p.m. And that is going to keep you in that window, and it's going to help with your blood sugar regulation. Now, the last 2 things here you want to focus on are number 1, building muscle and losing weight, which I'm not going to talk about how to do in this video. But what they do is they help improve your blood sugar regulation, which, as we know now, is one of the root causes for a broken metabolism. And what you also want to do is get high quality sleep and manage stress properly. When you're getting shitty sleep, you're stressed out and you're inflamed, what this is going to do is increase the likelihood you become insulin resistant, and it's going to fuck with your blood sugar regulation. Now, we're going to talk about how to get proper sleep and how to manage stress properly later in this video, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention, how important it is to make sure your recovery is dialed in to fix your metabolism. Now, please do not stress yourself out about trying to be perfect with all these different practices. Pick a couple of blood sugar regulation practices and stay consistent with them. Try to walk after meals. Try to eat within an 8 to 12 hour eating window. And with zone 2, don't expect to do 60 minutes 3 times a week right away. Build your way up and focus on consistently doing it week after week. And over time, you're going to start to improve your energy and mental clarity in those afternoon sessions. Now, the next issue you want to fix to crush your afternoons is your gut health. And remember, your gut health, your broken gut, is responsible probably for your brain fog, your energy crashes, and it's also inflaming your body, which is just going to add to your overall stress load. And where I would start with improving your gut health is with probiotics, because what many studies have shown is that no matter what gut issue you have, IBS, leaky gut, gut dysbiosis, SIBO, probiotics are going to help improve your gut health. So I'd start here. And this is what I'd recommend. Now, I'm going to give you 2 types of probiotics you can take, but I only recommend taking one to start. The first is a soil-based probiotic, and you want to be taking 2 to 6 billion CFU per day for 1 to 3 months. Now, these ranges are just recommendations, and I'd recommend you start at the lower range, so start at 2 billion CFU and work your way up, and also see within this time range, do your symptoms improve? If you're noticing your symptoms are improving by the 1 month mark, then continue going to the 3 month mark, taking this probiotic. Now, the second probiotic you can take is Bifidobacterium or Lactobacillus, which I didn't want to spell here. And you want to take 1 to 10 billion CFU per day for 2 to 3 months. Again, same thing here. Start at the lower range, work your way up, make sure your body is comfortable taking these probiotics. And then if you see your symptoms are improving by that 2 month mark, then go to the 3 month mark and see if they improve even further. Now, alongside taking a probiotic, you also want to have proper meal hygiene. This is going to allow for better digestion in your gut, which is going to lead to fewer gut issues. The first thing you want to do is chew your food to a pulp. This is going to break down your food before it actually enters your gut, which is going to make it easier to digest. Now, the second thing you want to do is breath work before meals. You want to just take a couple of deep breaths before you actually eat. And you also want to be present. Try not to be on your phone or doing other things. And the reason I mentioned both of these is because in order for your gut to be working well and digesting food well, it has to be in a relaxed state. Your nervous system has to be in that relaxed mode, that parasympathetic state. And so when you're eating and you're also stressed, your body isn't going to digest the food as well. And that is going to lead to a lot of gut issues, and probably where a considerable amount of your gut issues have started was because you were eating in a stressed state. So it's really important that you are taking a couple of deep breaths before you eat your meals, and also just staying off your phone. If you're also in an environment that makes you stressed, that can make things worse. So try to be in a more relaxed environment. And this is why you also need to have your recovery dialed in. Because again, if you are in a stress state, not just when you're eating, but outside of when you're eating, because your body is always digesting food. If you're stressed out, you're not going to digest that food well, and it's going to make it so much harder for you to heal your gut. And this is what personally happened with me. I did a lot of these protocols, including probiotics, meal hygiene, low FODMAP diet, and herbal treatment, which we'll get into. And my gut was still a mess. And it was because my sleep and stress management were still not dialed in. So it is so crucial that you are also prioritizing recovery, because all of health is connected. Now, if you do these practices over the next couple of months, the probiotics, the meal hygiene, the proper recovery, and you only see a partial improvement or no improvement in your brain fog and energy crashes after eating, or your digestive symptoms like the bloating and abdominal pain, then what I recommend is moving on to these other protocols, because that can mean you have a more serious gut issue. So the first one here is the low FODMAP diet. And what you're doing here is removing, foods that inflame your gut. Things like gluten, dairy, certain types of fruits and vegetables, and other carbohydrates. And what this does is it allows your gut to heal. And this is a temporary protocol, usually like 2 to 3 months, and then you start reintroducing foods slowly again and making sure you're only eating the foods that are good for your gut and not eating the foods that inflame your guts. Another protocol here is the herbal treatment. This is taking different herbs to clear out the bad bacteria that may be in your gut and may be inflaming your guts and preventing you from healing your guts. Now, I'm not going to explain either of these in depth. There are plenty of videos out there where you can learn more about them, and I will make a future video on how to actually implement these protocols. The next step to crush your afternoon is to prioritize recovery. We've already talked about its importance regarding fixing your metabolism, fixing your gut health, and recovery is really what dictates how you perform and feel in the afternoon. I want you to think of recovery like charging a battery. Let's say everybody starts off with a battery at the beginning of the day, and this battery dictates how well we perform, how we feel, and how long we can perform for. Now, if you're somebody who's getting okay sleep and not really managing your stress properly, you might start off the day with a half full battery. And what this means is in the morning, you can perform really well, but by the time you get to the afternoon, you run out of charge. And so you suffer through the afternoons. And so the way to fix that is to recover, because what recovering does is it charges this battery. So if you get high quality sleep and manage stress properly, you might start the day with a full charge of battery. And that way, instead of crashing in the afternoons, you actually have enough fuel to perform and feel at your best through the afternoon. And that is why recovery is so important. And the first step to recovering is getting high quality sleep. This is one of the most important factors in dictating how well you recover. And it comes down to 4 keys. The first key is the quantity of sleep. This is how many hours of sleep you're getting. Ideally, you want to be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single night. The second factor is your quality. This is how much REM and deep sleep you're getting. You want at least 40% of your sleep to consist of REM and deep sleep. And the best way to tell if this is just using a tracker, like a Whoop or an Oura Ring. If you don't have those, then you can just measure your subjective sleep quality on a scale from 1 to 10, and that should be pretty good as well. The next factor is continuity. So how continuous is your sleep? Ideally, you want to be waking up 0 times a night. But if you are waking up, it's not the end of the world. What really matters here is, are these wake-ups decreasing the quantity, so how many hours you're sleeping, or the quality of your sleep? If they're decreasing your REM and deep sleep, these are wake-ups you want to deal with. Let me give you an example. Let's say you wake up in the middle of the night, you go and use the restroom, you come back to bed, and you fall asleep within minutes. I'd call that a harmless wake-up, and I wouldn't worry about it. However, if you're waking up in the middle of the night and then you struggle to fall back asleep for more than 30 minutes, I would call that a harmful wake up. And that is something you want to fix because it's decreasing the quantity and quality of our sleep. The last factor that determines your sleep quality is consistency. So how consistent are you with your sleep schedule? You want to be going to bed and waking up at around the same time every single night. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect. You can be off by 30 or even 60 minutes in either direction and still get good quality sleep. So what do I mean by this? I'm saying if you normally go to bed at 9 p.m., you can absolutely go to bed at 8 p.m., or you can go to bed at 10 p.m. and have minimal impact to your sleep quality. Where you start to get into trouble is when you try to push your bedtime over an hour of when you usually go to bed. When you start going to bed at 11, 12 a.m., or even 1 a.m., that is going to really hurt your sleep quality. And the same goes for when you wake up. If you usually wake up at 5 a.m., you want to try to wake up between 4 and 6 a.m. to have minimal impact on your sleep quality. Now, I would not sleep on this. Studies have shown that how consistent you are with your sleep schedule might matter more than how many hours you are sleeping when it comes to determining your quality of sleep. So please, make sure you are consistent with your sleep schedule, even on the weekends. Now, sleep is going to be your main form of recovery, but there's a couple other practices you want to be doing during the day to also recover. And the first one here is exercise. And I'm not talking about weightlifting or doing sprints. I'm talking about exercise that helps you reduce stress while you do it. And it also helps you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, this relaxed state that helps our bodies recover. So what type of movement am I talking about? I'm talking about things like zone 2 cardio or walking or yoga. All of these things help you reduce stress while you do the exercise. The next practice is nature, and nature is one of the most powerful ways you can recover. What nature does is signals to our nervous system that we are safe, and this allows us to enter that relaxed state, that parasympathetic state, which helps our body again recover. Now, what do I mean by getting out in nature? I don't mean you have to live in a fucking forest. I'm talking a couple times a week for 30 or 60 minutes, just get out and see some nature. Go to the beach, go on a hike, even go to your local park or go to a fucking plant store where you get all those house plants, whatever it is, just see some fucking nature. And doing this a couple times a week has changed the way I recover. If I don't do this and I go into the week without seeing my nature, I perform and feel so much worse. So I'm telling you, do not sleep on this. Speaking of powerful ways to recover, socializing is right up there with nature, and it works the exact same way. When you're around the people you love and genuinely enjoy spending time with, so your friends and family, this signals to our nervous system we are safe, and it allows us to shift into that parasympathetic state, which helps us recover. And just like nature, you don't need to do socializing all the time. You don't need to live with your fucking family or best friend. All you need to do is see your families and friends a couple times a week. This could look like going to dinner with your friends on the weekends or just calling your mom or dad in the evening. And again, when I do not do socializing on the weekends, especially, I notice that the next week I don't perform and feel as good as I usually do. Now, the last practice here is meditation and breath work, and this is the fastest way to shift our nervous system out of a stress state into a more relaxed state. And the reason we want to do this is because the less time we can spend in a stressed state, the less stressed we will be. I know, common sense. Now, what does this look like? Whenever you feel yourself getting stressed out, you want to do some sort of breathwork or meditation practice. For example, let's say you have a sales call in 30 minutes and you're feeling yourself getting a little riled up, a little stressed out. You can go and do a 5-minute meditation session or just a couple minutes of breath work. And that is going to allow you to relax, which will allow you to perform better on the sales call. And it's also going to help you reduce your stress. And one strategy to implement these practices is something called micro breaks. These are 5 to 15-minute breaks you take throughout the day. And their purpose is to make sure you're keeping your stress levels down. They keep you more in that parasympathetic state. So what this could look like is after your morning work session, you might go for a 10-minute walk. Or in between sales calls, you might do a couple minutes of breath work. Or after you're done with work for the day, you might do 15 minutes of zone 2 cardio. Now, it is really important that you make your recovery practices easy and also enjoyable. Because if you make them these things, you are going to stick with these for the long run. So for example, if you don't like meditation and breath work, don't do meditation or breath work. Do something on this list that's enjoyable, like maybe getting out in nature, getting some exercise. If you find that it's really hard to get out in nature because of where you live, then don't do nature because that's going to prevent you from staying consistent. Instead, do something easier, maybe calling your dad after work or going for a walk outside of your house. The last thing you want to do is optimize your fasting and caffeine timing. A lot of you are fasting for over 3 hours, and this might be stressing your body out because you're running on that stress response for too long. So instead, I'd like you to try experimenting with fasting for 2 to 3 hours instead. The second thing you want to do is not drink coffee for the first hour and a half to 2 hours after you wake up. And what this is going to allow you to do is have better energy through the morning all the way until the early afternoon. And it's also going to make it so you don't have that caffeine crash you normally get in the afternoon. Now, initially, not having caffeine for the first 90 to 120 minutes of the day is going to be a bit rough. So to get some natural energy, I'd recommend getting some morning sunlight. This can be for 5 to 10 minutes. That's all you need. You can also go for a walk or do some light exercise. That's also going to wake you up. And finally, having a consistent wake time is really important to make sure you are setting your morning cortisol spike accordingly. What this is a natural energy wave we get in the morning. And the more consistent you can be with the time you wake up, the stronger this natural energy wave is going to be. Now, both of these are general guidelines. It's really important that you experiment with the timing for yourself. You might figure out that you can actually fast for 5 hours and feel great, and the real culprit was because you were getting shitty sleep. All right, that's all for me. I hope these tips can help you crush your afternoon. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. And if you also like more personalized support with your health, your energy, and to stop feeling like shit, you can also reach out to me on Instagram. Thank you guys again, and have a great rest of your day.